I can't be certain about what the real reason is for Luis Ortiz turning down this Anthony Joshua fight. But what I can say is that I'm not remotely convinced by the excuse that his team have come up with that Eddie Hearn lowballed them. I don't buy that for a second. Why? Because, to my knowledge, the biggest purse Luis Ortiz has ever received in his entire boxing career was just $500,000, and that was against Deontay Wilder last year. So, if Ortiz is willing to get in the ring with Wilder for 500 grand, are we to believe that Eddie Hearn has offered him less than that to face AJ? Ortiz hasn't become a huge ticket seller since the Wilder fight to be demanding a vastly bigger purse. He hasn't been packing out arenas. He hasn't been headlining pay-per-views. No, Luis Ortiz has actually drifted back off into obscurity since the Deontay Wilder fight. And he was happy to get in there and face Wilder for 500 grand. But yet, he don't want to get in the ring with AJ, claiming he's being lowballed. I don't buy it for a second. I suspect, and this is just speculation, that he's been offered maybe 3 times, at least 2 times as much as he got for the Wilder fight. Now, in a recent interview, Eddie Hearn, and this was prior to Ortiz's team coming out and formally rejecting Hearn's offers. In this recent interview, I think it was with IFL, Eddie Hearn claimed that Team Ortiz told him that they've been promised the Wilder fight. Well, is he getting more for the Wilder rematch than he's been offered to fight Anthony Joshua? Potentially. But what does that tell us about Deontay Wilder? That tells us, if it's true what Ortiz's team is saying, that tells us that Deontay Wilder has no intention of fighting Anthony Joshua if he gets past Dominic Breazeale. The one face, one name stuff is all BS from Wilder. Has no intention of fighting AJ. I mean, he just turned down a deal of over $100 million to fight Breazeale and then AJ twice. This idea that AJ's running from Wilder is completely ridiculous at this point, given these facts. So, what is the real reason for Luis Ortiz turning down the AJ fight? Well, I've got a couple of plausible explanations. The first plausible explanation is that Luis Ortiz, a man who has been popped for banned substances multiple times in the past, perhaps he's got something in his system right now which he shouldn't have, and is therefore concerned about taking the AJ fight because he could get popped again, because AJ's got VADA testing in place. That's one possibility, which is plausible given Ortiz's history. I'm not saying it's the case. I'm not accusing Luis Ortiz of anything, but we know the man's history. So that's one plausible explanation. The other plausible explanation is that Al Haymon simply does not want Luis Ortiz to fight Anthony Joshua. Why wouldn't he want that? Well, there is a propaganda war going on right now in boxing, where Deontay Wilder and other fighters like Tyson Fury and his team and his supporters, they are running with this narrative that Anthony Joshua is some kind of hype job who don't want to unify, who avoids the tough fights, etc., etc. And that narrative has allowed Deontay Wilder to start building a fan base and a support base in the United States. This idea that he's an avoided man, the most dangerous fighter in boxing, etc. That not only does Anthony Joshua not want to fight Wilder and is being protected from Wilder, but he wouldn't even fight people like Luis Ortiz, because Ortiz would destroy Anthony Joshua. This is the narrative which is being pushed and popularized by the Wilder team. If Al Haymon was to allow Luis Ortiz to fight AJ, and AJ was to dispatch of Ortiz far easier than Wilder was able to, that's going to make Deontay Wilder look bad. That's going to start eroding this narrative which Team Wilder have been pushing. Because for one, if Anthony Joshua was simply to take the fight with Luis Ortiz, that's going to make Wilder and his team and his fans look silly, because they were all claiming that Joshua would never take that fight. So if he takes the fight, it hurts Wilder's credibility and helps AJ's credibility. Then if AJ wins the fight, it hurts Wilder's credibility and helps AJ's credibility. But to top it all off, if AJ wins the fight in convincing fashion, far easier than Wilder beat Ortiz, it almost destroys the narrative altogether, massively boosting AJ's credibility and seriously hurting Wilder's credibility. Al Haymon is a very smart man. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows that what I'm saying is definitely on his mind. Even if that's not the real reason that he has, or that Luis Ortiz hasn't taken the AJ fight, he certainly knows that if AJ was to destroy Luis Ortiz, it hurts Wilder's credibility. So those are the two plausible explanations for Luis Ortiz turning this fight down. The other possibility is that Luis Ortiz just don't want that smoke. But I personally suspect that Luis Ortiz is not afraid of Anthony Joshua. And I think if circumstances were right, he would take the fight. And when I say circumstances were right, I'm saying if he had 3 months notice. So if he was taking anything he shouldn't be taking, he might have adequate time to cycle off it and get everything out of his system, etc. And if he was allowed by his manager, or advisor Al Haymon, to go forward to, go ahead with the AJ fight, I personally think he would. Again, he took 500 grand. That's all he made against Deontay Wilder. He was happy to fight Wilder for 500K. And that's in dollars, not pounds. But yet he don't want to fight AJ. It's not just about the money, it's about the opportunity to win the 3 belts, to defeat the highest paid fighter in boxing right now, or at least the highest paid heavyweight in boxing right now. And in the rematch, Ortiz would get way more money. If the narrative that the Wilder fanboys push is to be believed, Luis Ortiz destroys AJ. So take the opportunity. It's like taking candy from a baby, right? AJ is this hype job and he's got a glass jaw and he can't fight and he's a coward. So take the fight for whatever they're paying you and then unify with Deontay Wilder. That's an in-house Al Haymon fight. My suspicion is that the reason Luis Ortiz, and I've given you guys 2 plausible explanations. My suspicion is that the latter of the 2 explanations is actually true. That it's Al Haymon preventing Ortiz from taking the AJ fight. Somebody sent me a document which appears to be an Al Haymon contract, his advisory contract that he has with various different professional boxers. And it, to me, looks like a promotional contract, a standard promotional. That's what it looks like to me. Of course, it doesn't have Haymon's name in there being listed as the promoter, but it's got him being referred to as an advisor. But so many of the stipulations in the contract mirror what you would have in a promotional contract. So, for example, in the Al Haymon contract, which I was sent, it says that the fighter, the athlete, is not allowed to fight on any other or on any promoter's show without permission from Al Haymon. So if that contract I was sent is legit. And to me, it looks legit. All right. Some of you guys may have seen it doing the rounds. It looks legit to me, but who knows, right? If it is legit, then it would mean that Luis Ortiz has to ask permission. He has to get permission from Al Haymon to fight AJ. And if Haymon don't want to give him the permission, then he can't fight AJ. Simple as that. I suspect that that is probably what's going on. We know that Al Haymon has been keeping his welterweights away from Terence Crawford and trying to keep it all in-house for the last year or so. We know that. And now I suspect that Al Haymon is trying to keep his heavyweights away from Anthony Joshua. Now, there was a time when Al Haymon allowed his heavyweights to fight AJ. Charles Martin was an Al Haymon heavyweight. Dominic Breazeale was an Al Haymon heavyweight. But at the time, Eddie Hearn wasn't a direct competitor of Al Haymon because he hadn't at the time made incursions into the US market. He hadn't done the DAZN deal. So Eddie Hearn wasn't as much of a threat to Al Haymon back then as he is now. On top of that, PBC at the time were a lot more aggressive and maverick in their approach to business. They had shows on multiple different networks simultaneously. Since that time, PBC have tightened their purse strings. They've streamlined their business model. They're not quite as adventurous or bold or, risky as they were a few years ago. They're being a lot more careful now in terms of who they put their fighters in with regards to fighters belonging to other promoters and other networks. So the landscape has changed. Neither Dominic Breazeale nor Charles Martin at the time they fought AJ were big ticket sellers in the US. Neither one of them had ever fought on a pay-per-view in the US. Neither one of them was a household name or had any kind of serious following. So at the time, sending Charles Martin over to the UK to be paid millions of dollars was probably the best option for him. But the landscape has changed since then. Deontay Wilder is a far more valuable commodity to Al Haymon than either of those two fighters were. Martin or Dominic Breazeale. Far more valuable commodity. Luis Ortiz is part of that situation. Deontay Wilder, it would seem, is not going to fight Anthony Joshua or Tyson Fury anytime soon. Now, to be fair, he was going to fight Fury this year, but Fury decided to go in a different direction. But with regards to AJ, that's Wilder's team's decision, or Wilder's decision himself. Pick whichever one you want. They've decided not to fight AJ. And Ortiz, he is being lined up, from as far as I can see, as an opponent for Wilder. Because Wilder's going to need opponents. Since the AJ fight ain't happening and the Fury rematch ain't happening anytime soon, Wilder's going to need opponents. So Haymon wants to save opponents for Wilder, like Ortiz, like maybe Kaunaki. It remains to be seen whether Andy Ruiz, who is a new Al Haymon signing, will get the Anthony Joshua fight. It's still being negotiated at this point, to my knowledge. But that's my take on the situation. And as far as the lowballing, constantly accusing AJ of lowballing everybody. Deontay Wilder was offered his career highest purse to fight Anthony Joshua. And he called it a lowball offer. That was his excuse for getting out of the fight, truth be told. Since that time, Tyson Fury, Dylan White, and Luis Ortiz have also jumped on that bandwagon. Why? Because it's a convenient excuse that many gullible people will fall for. It's kind of like the Me Too movement, right? And look, there are, I'm sure, legitimate victims in the Me Too movement, but there are also a lot of women coming out claiming that some man brushed past their left breast by the water cooler in 1975. So now they want compensation for sexual assault. Just because lots of people are saying something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's legitimate. Sometimes people just see an opportunity to jump on a bandwagon. Right now, when a heavyweight doesn't want to fight AJ for whatever reason, whether it's because he's cycling off something, or it's because his promoter or TV network don't want him to do it, when a heavyweight don't want to fight AJ for whatever reason, they just use the popular pre-packaged excuse, he lowballed me too. That's what they do. But the reality is that so-called lowball offer was more money than you've ever made in any other fight in your entire career. And it's more money than you're going to be getting for your next fight. So you're happy to go ahead with your next fight, which is for far less money than AJ offered you. But yet you turn down AJ's offer and call it a lowball. Ridiculous. It's an excuse. It's people jumping on the bandwagon because they know there are a lot of gullible fans out there who have bought the propaganda from Team Wilder. Lowball offers. Man offered you 40 million. 40 million. And you turned it down. Think about that. 40 million for one fight, 40 million for the rematch. 80 million if you want to fight him twice. You turned it down. And you're going to fight Dominic Brazil and who else after that? Ortiz? I can tell you none of those fights are going to make you 40 million. If you turn someone down and call it a lowball offer, what is the alternative to justify turning that kind of money down? Who else are you going to fight and get that kind of money? Utterly ridiculous. The picture is becoming much clearer now. Al Haymon, as far as I can see, is replicating at heavyweight what he's been doing at welterweight. Keeping his fighters away, at least his top fighters like Wilder, away from the biggest threat to him as an advisor / unofficial promoter, and to the networks which he operates on, Showtime and Fox. He does it at welterweight, keeping his welterweights away from Terence Crawford. He's doing it at heavyweight, keeping Wilder away from Anthony Joshua. They thought they would catch Tyson Fury at the right time, when he was weak. That's why they took that fight, in my opinion. Tyson Fury is also of that opinion. But here with AJ, no, they don't want that smoke. His team don't want that smoke. Is Deontay Wilder himself afraid of the AJ fight? Probably not. But his team are afraid, evidently. And Deontay Wilder's just not that bright to be able to figure it out. So, yeah, Luis Ortiz officially ducks the Anthony Joshua fight. Facts. Emotions won't change that. It don't matter how upset you get, a duck is a duck. Whether he's done it for political reasons or whatever the case may be, he's ducked the fight. Or his team have ducked the fight. If Al Haymon is the one who's prevented Ortiz from taking it, then I guess you could say his team ducked the fight. His team have kept him away from AJ. It's not AJ's fault. And if you want to talk about late notice, hey, Deontay Wilder's had plenty of fights where the opponent took him on at late notice. I talked about that in a previous video. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about everything I've talked about here. It's happening, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.